Hello, everybody. It is so great to be here. I'm sorry I'm speaking over your lunch, but we wanted to keep this program going so we don't run into overlapping with dinner, which would be worse. So, my slide deck should be loaded any second, but I just wanted to say this conference has been fascinating for someone from my field. So I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, a researcher around workplace, everything to do with people at work. And I chose to specialize in work psychology because our work is a big part of our identity, and it can make or break our well-being. It can make or break our health. And these are the linkages that I'm excited to draw on today. And from a longevity perspective, what I'm learning is so interesting. So I lost my father when he was only 66 to an aortic aneurysm. And I was really young at the time, and it was really hard. And I just wonder if, that was almost 30 years ago, but I wonder, with the science and the advancements of today, if he could have had years added to his life by the wonderful work so many of you are doing. On the flip side of it, my mother had a 15-year dementia, which was grueling, horrible, and her health span at the end was not good. I would say the last 10 years of her life were zero or to hardly any quality of life. So I really like the term health span. I think it's a super important term. And so what I've dedicated my career to over the last 15 years, I've run Canada Career Counseling. So we help people find meaning, purpose, and fulfillment in their careers. And we deal with workplace issues, and we help organizations to thrive. So I have a team of 24. This is some of my Calgary team, but I have Vancouver, Toronto, and Halifax. And being registered psychologists, people can use their insurance and benefits. So we're able to help a lot of individuals. And people say, well, career, that doesn't really seem like an area of psychology, but it very much is, because if you are struggling with your career identity, if you're facing workplace stress and burnout, it is very psychological. So we're going to talk today about work stress and burnout and what that is all about. There's a lot of challenges in today's workplaces. So I've been 25 years in this whole arena of psychology with career and workplaces at the center of my work, my consulting, my research. I've been speaking on this a lot. And what I see across industries, and healthcare is no exception, I see under-resourcing. I see people having to do more than ever with less. So we have all these advances in technology and now AI, yet workloads are crippling. Then we have volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The world is uncertain. Workplaces are uncertain. There's this rapid pace of change. There's the information overload we're all facing. Then there's the fear of layoffs. There's the restructurings, and sometimes constant restructurings. Didn't we just finish the last restructuring? Now there's a new CEO and there's another restructuring. That is so hard on human beings. Then we have challenging people dynamics. We have a lack of strong leadership. So a lot of people are promoted into leadership because they might be a good engineer, they might be a good physician, and they're promoted to suddenly leading human beings without the appropriate training, without being assessed for their fit. Do they have the competencies? Do they have the internal ingredients to be a good people leader? And that's been a big source of the work that I do, because it causes a lot of problems when someone isn't a fit for leadership, yet they're leading human beings on a daily basis. And then we got workplace conflict. It could be personality conflict. It could be workplace dynamics that are dysfunctional. And then we have generations. We have up to 5 generations in the workplace right now. So traditionalists are hanging on. There's people in their 70s still working, thanks to longevity. But we have values clashes between the generations. And I never like to stereotype one generation, and I'm a huge fan of Generation Z, our newest generation. I think they're amazing, but they get a bad reputation, and I don't like that. I think it's wrong to stereotype generations. So what's occupational stress or work stress? It's when work impacts us physically and psychologically. So it's the conditions of work are detrimental to our well-being. And work stress is influenced by a lot of different things, but some of the main ones are lack of autonomy and independence. So I don't have control over my work. I don't have the ability to make decisions. Perhaps I'm micromanaged. Workloads, we already talked about heavy workloads. Job security, fear of the next merger, the next restructuring impacting me. Physical and psychological safety. So the topic of psychological safety is a pretty important one these days, as is physical safety. And then our relationships with our supervisors and coworkers, which can be wonderful or can be toxic. So the prevalence is high, and I think anecdotally, I think all of you are dealing or have seen your loved ones dealing with workplace stress. 77% of Americans report, this is some of the latest data, saying that they've been stressed out in the last month. No surprise there. 57% indicated they experienced burnout due to workplace stress. And burnout is a self-rated, self-perceived situation, and I'm going to talk more about what burnout is. And 1 in 4 Canadians have said they have felt burnt out in the last year. That's up from 21% the year before. So what's happened and what I've noticed as a future of work thought leader, someone who's following the trends, is I'm seeing that the pandemic was a great reset and a chance to make workplaces better. And I think there were some positive learnings from the pandemic, but here we are. We seem to be heading towards greater levels of burnout again. And the mental health crisis is significant. I see it across organizations. I worry about today's young people, and I see that we need to do something about work stress, because if we're talking about longevity, people spend a lot of their waking time at work, and we need to look at the conditions of their life at work, because this work stress affects our bodies, it affects our mood and our thoughts, it can affect our focus, our sadness, our anxiety. I mean, levels of anxiety super high, and then it can affect our behaviors. So we may end up withdrawing socially. We may end up drinking more, eating more in order to self-medicate from the constant and chronic stress. Come on. Burnout. So oftentimes I hear stress and burnout used synonymously. They're actually different concepts. So according to the ICD, burnout is a chronic condition of workplace stress that hasn't been managed. So I have chronic, constant workplace stress, it's not managed, and I end up feeling burnt out. It's exhaustion, my energy is very low, I'm depleted. And I always say that people are like rechargeable batteries. They're not like the laptop that you can leave plugged in all the time. You need to recharge this battery. And when people don't do it, they deplete their energy. And then they become cynical when they're burnt out. Things are never going to get better. There's nothing I can do to make things better. And I feel trapped. Oftentimes, our clients talk about feeling trapped and there's no way out. And then there's feeling I'm not good enough, maybe it's me. So starting to doubt myself and my confidence is another part of being burnt out. It's not a medical or clinical diagnosis, so it's not officially diagnosed. It's more of a self-perceived phenomenon, but it's a real thing. If I perceive myself as being burnt out, that's a real problem, because I am suffering from the exhaustion and the low confidence and all those things, and it is impacting my ability to work and be productive. It's not caused by the person, it's caused by the workplace conditions. And it's not another word for stress. What causes it? Lack of fairness, decisions that are made unfairly, being overloaded, lacking control over your work, a values mismatch. And at Canada Career Counseling, a lot of people come to us to change jobs or change careers, and it's often a values mismatch. What I hold dear and true to me is not honored by my boss or my organization. Toxic workplace behavior. And I've started a whole program of research around this. I have 2 studies going on right now. I'm writing a book on it because the issue of toxic leadership is a widespread one across industries, and toxic leadership impacts longevity. I have no doubt about it. And I want to do cross-disciplinary research on that, by the way. And then unfair rewards. So my compensation, my rewards, my promotions, it's unfair. Those are all things that increase the odds of being burnt out. So I took it upon myself to see what's out there around burnout and longevity. And there's some interesting articles, and I'm happy to share any of this research that I found, but one of them is 1.5 million people in Denmark, and they were tracked over 18 years, and they were in high stress occupations. So high stress occupations mean that you have high demand and you're expected to have a high constant effort, but you have low control. So you might not have control over how you get the work done. Perhaps it's just really rigid, perhaps there's micromanagement, and there's low rewards. Okay, so it's an imbalance in what's going on here. And their risk of chronic disease was 4% greater for women and 12% greater for men. And they tracked multiple chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, dementia, etc. So I thought that was interesting and alarming. And then another study found that burnout is linked to cardiovascular disease, but it's through certain mechanisms, like increased inflammation happens, sleep disorders. And I always say that sleep is paramount. When sleep goes, everything else goes. So any of you docs that are specializing in sleep, fabulous. I think it's so important. And so many of my clients have struggled with that. And then people adopt unhealthy habits to self-medicate. As we know, the smoking, the poor diet, the drugs, recreational drugs. And then they're exhausted, so they don't exercise. And we know that that's a vicious cycle. The exhaustion, we don't exercise, then we don't build up energy. And the exercise is so good for us. We know that. And so it's, again, a vicious cycle. And then another study found that burnout is linked to type 2 diabetes. It's linked to immunosuppression, not a surprise, inflammation, and reduced neurogenesis. And our frontal lobe, our hippocampus, they're just not functioning as well. So we're not as good at solving problems. We're not as good at innovating and creating. And this difficult world needs lots of innovation, which so many of you are doing. I'm just so inspired by a lot of the startups that I'm hearing about here and the research and the contributions. My goodness, but we need our brains at the best possible state of health to be doing this great work. So, why is reducing stress and burnout so important? Because if we reduce stress and burnout, we can have better resilience in people, which means stronger mental health. I view burnout as at the end of a mental health continuum, and the more we can get people towards being well and healthy and resilient, then they'll have greater resilience and capacity to handle the curveballs. And we all know life is full of those, don't we? They'll have higher productivity, they'll get more done, and they'll be able to work longer. Being able to contribute more in your career, more fruitful years and meaning and purpose in the third of careers, so important. And I've been interviewed a lot in the media, and I was interviewed by the Canadian Press last week on ageism and how a lot of people are feeling ageism at age 55 and above. And I say, 55? I mean, a lot of people are working up till 70 plus, and you have 50 more years and you're struggling with ageism. And I said, ageism is inside of you. You can start to feel that inside of you, but it's all about energy and the way you portray yourself. And I think people in the later stages of career have so much wisdom to offer. So I really think that we need to be working longer, but working on fulfilling aspects and giving back and mentoring the next generation. If we are working longer, that's what needs to be happening. So how do we address the burnout culprits? Well, what is happening with the organizations that I work with and I see, and no organization is immune, whether you're a startup of 5 people or whether you're an organization of 50,000 people, this can be happening. Burnout can be happening, and it's the conditions of the workplace that need to be looked at. So, if you focus on the person, so look at the plant, the person. Are they wilting? Do they need more help because they're struggling? This plant's struggling. I always say, look at the root system. What are the work conditions that are contributing to the burnout? Because, yeah, the plant may be struggling, but let's look underneath and address these root causes. Too many organizations do not do that. Instead, what they do is they say, okay, we're gonna put some quick fixes in place. Extra vacation time, mandate vacations because people aren't taking them, give mental health days. Maybe we can decrease work hours in some way or give them a little more flexibility. Maybe we'll put in some wellness programs. Well, you can't yoga your way to be mentally healthy. You know, if you put in a yoga class every week, that's great. I really admire that. I love yoga, but that's not gonna fix systemic workplace issues. EAP and EFAPs, they're underutilized. Yeah, they're important, but they're only temporary relief. What we need is to get to the bottom of workloads. What's happening with workloads? How can we resource organizations better than we do? How can we make things more efficient and use AI to actually open up people's time? Not just open space and then put more work and jobs so people are doing extra jobs because of AI. We need to hire, promote, and develop people leaders. We need to gather climate feedback to assess what's going on. We need to identify if there's hotspots. Toxic hotspots mean that people are not functioning well, they're not thriving. Perhaps it's a toxic leader. And the US Surgeon General in 2022 said workplaces that are disrespectful and abusive are hazardous to your health. And this is so true. I agree 100% with this. So we need to prioritize mental wellness and stop rewarding overwork. If you work 55, 60 hours a week and you're bragging about that, yeah, I put in another 60-hour week. Shame on you. You know, that's not healthy. That's not healthy. You should not be bragging about that. Something's going wrong with how your organization is functioning, with how you're delegating, with your ability to say no. And yeah, you can do that for a while, but as you age especially, this is going to take a major toll. People need greater autonomy and flexibility. Dr. Bob Schultz and I did a project. I got the honor of working with him on a project on how we increase telework adoption 20 years ago, and we wrote a book on it. And it's just so important today. All the stuff in that book still applies. We need organizations that embrace flexibility and give people control back of their time. So calling everyone back to an office, totally disagree on. Totally. I speak about that all the time. And we need to care about people as people, not assets or resources. Check in with them, not check up on them. Show genuine appreciation. This is a free commodity, appreciation, and it is so underutilized. And then we need to have career development conversations, which is a whole other topic, but it's so important to be able to ask people what they need for their development and where they want their career to head. I'm in my 5th year of a podcast. I get a lot of global experts on different topics, like brain and exercise, or Dr. Balpawa, I have a really good one on the mind-body cure. So I have lots of docs on there, lots of experts. I have a work-life wellness indicator that I developed through a research project that can assess how well your work-life wellness is going. So if you scan that, I can send that over to you. I do a monthly update on my latest articles, blogs, and research through my Dr. Laura platform. And then I have all those references, so anyone who wants these papers I'm talking about, I'm happy to give them. Thanks for having me, and yes, I love this conference.